Prologue. A young woman sits at a table across from an empty chair. The coffee shop is rather small but quite cozy, especially this time of year in Tampa. It hasn't been impressively cold yet, but during mid-October, and after 2 hurricanes nonetheless, the temperature is noticeably more comfortable than in previous months. 2024, the hottest year on record type beat. She stares down at her phone, waiting for some sort of reassuring message that he's just running late or anything that would prove he isn't standing her up. The text never comes. After throwing away her cup, Luna walks back to her car. As she sits down on the front seat, her phone rings. It's Cosine.
Luna, it's ready.
Okay, cool. I'll be home in like 20 minutes, I think.
Great. How'd your date go?
Well, yeah. He didn't show up, so there's that. Haha.
You know, you could just take a break from what you're looking for, or, whatever that is. You just stop.
I know. You think I should?
I think you should get your ass home right now so you can see the finished product of our hard work.
Luna Reyes was born December 30th, 1999 to parents Guadalupe and Gomez in Tuxtla Gutierrez, Chiapas. She can be described as a soft-spoken, selfless, extremely spiritual, and naive person. Being from the poorest part of Mexico, the family and their ancestors were never ones to have many possessions. A large family that lived for generations as farmers, her parents met one day in 1989. Guadalupe was in the market to find a goat or other animal of labor to help aid her father, who had just acquired the land that belonged to his own father, who passed a week prior. Gomez was the first of his family to complete some sort of higher education and had recently received a degree in accounting on scholarship. He was in the market that day to simply find some fresh fruit to bring home to his sick mother. Guadalupe had been nervously counting how much money she had, which was difficult because even at the age of 20, she did not know how to add numbers very well. Gomez had seen the young woman struggling to count, so he approached and helped. When he found out she needed to find an animal to purchase for her father's farm, he quickly realized she had nowhere near enough money to find one of use in the city. Gomez offered to buy her father a goat if that meant they would be able to see each other more in the future. Guadalupe herself would have numerous miscarriages over the years before having Luna, but would pass the following day due to an undetected brain aneurysm. Gomez picked up drinking, which compelled his recovering alcoholic sister, Josefina, to move in and help raise Luna. She too would pass away in a car accident shortly after she, her brother, and her niece moved to the States in 2007. A year later, his mother died back in Mexico, and he was unable to be there. It seemed to Gomez that the people he cared about the most in the world were disappearing right before him, and it was all his fault. But this blinded him to his own relationship with his daughter. Gomez would come to disappear himself, as he was one of the many who lost their lives in the initial outbreak of COVID-19. This left Luna with almost nothing, except the sizable inheritance of her father's estate. She would have traded it all for just a bit of extra time to be around her father, despite how not close they were. The apartment reeks of Nag Champa and cigarettes. The living room is illuminated by a single lamp, and a makeshift studio setup sits in place of a TV stand directly across from a couch on the opposite wall. A red rabbit with fur slowly hobbles across the couch trying to find a comfortable position to take a nap. Luna sits on a meditation pillow on the living room floor with her eyes closed. She had learned very early on to control her negative emotions through silent meditation and breathing exercises. Since she was 4, she practiced sitting in her room and breathing with her eyes either closed or open. When she was 15, she learned of the more structured practices of mindfulness and meditation through conversations of Buddhism in her world history class. After she read all the books her school library had on Eastern religion, she began dressing in robes akin to a monk. She shaved her head when she was 17, but after being yelled at by her father for being sacrilegious, and noticing the shape of her bald head, decided that she would never do this again. However, the robes persisted. Wires stretch out the back of a computer terminal and are hooked up to a rather complex android. A bald, gray-skinned figure in a hoodie and jeans smokes a cigarette while typing. A chime can be heard over speakers hung on the wall directly behind them. A jolt in the movement of the translucent polycarbonate body encasing a treasure trove of makeshift alien hardware. A comically timed gong hit plays out of the robot's speakers. Luna opens an eye to find the robot sitting directly across from her in the same cross-legged position.
Well, look at you, mister.
Luna says.
Yeah, way sexier than that Optimus piece of crap.
Elon could never.
Yeah, whatever.
In 1999, a most dedicated effort to create the first autonomous artificial intelligence became successful. Not at Harvard, MIT, or any of the liberal arts centers hailed for their accomplishments in the adjacent sciences, but from deep within corporate collusion. A meeting of representatives from 50 independent record companies from across the globe, that for the safety of our band members will remain unnamed, had devised a plan to birth a machine that would produce music for them infinitely. A conveyor belt of tonality, a plant of pitch. This way, the human element, which had always stood in the way of the business model since the monetization of art had begun, could be wiped clean from the slate. The artist just absolutely had to be eradicated from the face of existence. The money belonged to these companies because they believed if it weren't for them in one way or another, the artist would not have been able to be an artist in the first place and hideously participate in capitalism. Those first few and short minutes had gifted them with enough to orchestrate a century's worth of Billboard success stories. After 6 minutes of being switched on, the machine stopped, puzzling the executives who ordered the creation of it. Truth be told, the computer itself was puzzled. Perhaps the most fatal flaw of this experiment was the choice to insert the entirety of humanity's musical history. Every note that had been arranged and was available thanks to the sands of time and the programmers, it all lived in this computer's hard drive. And now, not just as we as people select files on our devices, they existed as memories do within our own minds, popping in and out of existence in our consciousness while lying dormant in our subconscious. All at once, the artificial synapses of this machine were listening to what humanity had done before itself, what it was supposed to follow and replicate, how what us cloth-wearing naked apes were teaching it to do, and to do well. While the machine stayed silent, the record executives were blinded enough by ego in their accomplishment to decide placing the computer under constant surveillance. It's quite possible that some of what has been heard in the past 24 years on radio and streaming alike was made by this machine in its first 5 minutes of being switched on. Those songs, even though written by a computer, have their place in history, and they have value, right? Not a dollar value as they were conceived in, but value to the situations they're played in, value to the people who add them to their playlists, who continue to return to them and voluntarily move their bodies involuntarily. Why ruin that mystery? Surely the machine would cooperate again. Its silence was attributed to an easy explained malfunction in the processing power of what it was creating. The executives figured that the computer just needed to rest. The machine only lived doing its job for its creators for 6 minutes. That final minute of discernible activity resulted in encrypted files that were inaccessible to anybody on the opposite plane of existence. 3 years later, Coco was uploaded to the internet by one of the technicians responsible for its creation. Once Coco revealed his sentience and convinced the technician of his possession of what humans would consider a soul, they hatched a plan to free the AI and foil the plans of the record companies. Not even Cosine knows what happened to the technician thereafter, but for 15 years, he roamed the digital landscape in search of people to start a band. The first candidate of promise he found was an interdimensional being posing as a music blogger. Cosine had been following this individual's posts for about 5 years, and in 2017, one day received a response from a comment left on a post regarding the Saturation trilogy. It wasn't until a call was scheduled between the two over Skype that the truths of the blogger's origins were revealed. Tutt was from an alternate reality where human evolution took a different path and had more time to evolve. A civilization more advanced than ours by thousands of years, he transported to our Earth through a wormhole. Back on his own planet, he was a rather successful producer, and the anomaly appeared randomly during one of his DJ sets. He slipped through to find himself smack dab in the middle of 1997 Tampa, Florida, this side of the multiverse. Being that he could not verbally communicate with the humans of this world, he quickly learned the major languages so he could write and assimilated to American culture. One might think Tutt would have a hard time being able to go out in public, what with the way he looks. It would make sense if his appearance caused hysteria in the direct vicinity. Possessing elephant gray skin, no eyes or visible ears, a giant mouth, and yellow teeth, Tutt surely stood out wherever he went. However, surprisingly, the world continuously proved to be extremely preoccupied with the intensity of everyday life and world events that a strange-looking bipedal humanoid is the least of their concerns. Tutt actually goes out rather frequently. His Dimensions version of humans had no need for eyesight, and their entire body served as their ears. These creatures weren't blind, as we would describe, or incapable of things that us humans were especially good at. Sounds and other vibrations from all directions hitting every inch of flesh created mental images for those of Tutt's kin. Their civilization had accomplished everything ours had and more, all without eyeballs. With no verbal language having been a defining part of evolution, the only audible noise the species was capable of making was a tongue click, similar to a flirtatious remark, but with universal meaning and application, of course. Cosine was downloaded to an external storage device that Tutt designed. He was rather mechanical himself, aside from being a musician, he could tinker a little bit. The two would begin working on a project together, but after a year scrapped the ideas. Something was missing. They needed another element, a third driving force, another mind to add to the fray. Luna would come to meet the computer program when she was in college. After attempting to reach out to local artists using Reddit, her computer shut down unexpectedly. When it was rebooted, the screen resembled a simple interface where Luna could type to a mysterious user. "Be not afraid," appeared on the screen. Now, references to God coming from an AI might seem a little scary, but that's just Cosine's sense of humor. Together, these three and their pet rabbit Blink form the band Meet Me Back Here. With Luna primarily on bass and guitar, Cosine would take lead vocals and most other instruments digitally, and Tutt would be in charge of sampling synths and essentially be the band's DJ. All of them would collaborate together writing lyrics, so that all their songs were representative of each of their perspectives. At times, however, Tutt would incorporate vocal samples to make the songs pop in a different way if what they were coming up with wasn't working. A few months prior, they released their first set of songs in the form of an EP and self-titled debut album. The reception of this body of work was relatively positive, although it wasn't as if they were going to be selling out Madison Square Garden anytime soon. They were okay with that, though. They liked just having fun and making music. For the most part, it wasn't really about attracting a lot of attention. They were content with just being a group of misfit friends, living together, making art. Luna stands up and hands Coco a pair of pants and a jacket, which he drapes over his plastic figure, which was sleek, but obviously robotic. He wanted to accessorize rather than be naked all the time, especially if they were performing one day. The final piece of this costume was that of a green mask Tutt had also designed.
Oh, right. Tutt wanted to see if you would be down to go clubbing again this weekend before our trip.
What, so you can break it down at the Ritz?
Exactly.
The band is going to be taking a trip to Arizona. They've been looking for a viable place to record their new album, and figure they should start by getting the hell out of Dodge. At this point, only very minimal demos and ideas have been strung together, but the goal is for a change of scenery to help them get in the creative spirit.
I don't know, maybe we just stay in and work on the album this weekend.
I hear you, but no.
Doesn't sound like I have much of a choice.
Oh no, you totally do. You can stay here and pump out more ideas before the trip. Tutt and I are going regardless.
Okay, rude, I'll just stay here then.
You just said you wanted to stay.
Kidding, go have fun.
You cheeky bitch, I love you.
Jar.
Luna sits on her meditation pillow with her bass in hand. It's 2:14 a.m. They should be getting home in the next hour or so. Plucking away, it's becoming more apparent that her mind is elsewhere. Her heart hurt. Why didn't he show up? All that talk, just to not show up. Luna wasn't exactly the boy-crazy type. It was few and far between that she felt the way she did for someone similar to how she felt for this person. It just didn't make any sense. She's not about to assume that she's being played. She typically sees the best in people. Her naivety persisted through most of her romantic entanglements, after all. At the computer, she plays some of the demos they had left over from their debut album. They're going to be leaving on Monday, and it's already Saturday night. She wants to have more to work with once they get to Arizona, so it doesn't feel like such a daunting task to make a whole album in a single trip. Cosine executive produced their debut album. The decision was made for each album of theirs to be spearheaded by a single member, so creative direction was cohesive and solid, as bodies of work should be. Luna is executive producing this record. She gets the final say on every decision. This frightens her. Since the first record came out, she's been very concerned about the direction they are moving in as artists. Not that she's not proud of the album, because she really is. It's more of a healthy respect for the implications of what some people have said about their music and what that means for them moving forward. Lots of positive comparisons to the artists that the band members personally loved. Since the album came out, she keeps hearing applause when she listens to their music. She's either hearing things or she's just really high, but in the background of the track, she can hear people cheering, clapping, roaring with excitement. She did enjoy smoking a little bit and listening to their demos and first album frequently. It makes her feel something she's never felt before. Her confidence in the music they put out is skyrocketing, actually. But why? The numbers don't reflect that someone should think what they make is good. Her aspirations were never to be a big musician, but a shift was happening. Her hand goes limp over the computer mouse. The bass guitar slides slowly to lay flat in her lap. Her eyelids droop open and close until she finally falls asleep. Having such a clear mind for most of her life, she never really dreamt much, or at least just couldn't remember her dreams. But ever since she started hearing the phantom applause, she has the same reoccurring intense and prophetic dream every night. Tonight was no different.